The people in Florida are very excitable. You know why? Because they have freedom. They have freedom. I see that the governor is having a good time beating the crap out of about Bragg. I congratulate Governor DeSantis for that. I do take issue, however, with the introduction to his way in which he did it, which I don't think is a good idea for him. Just like I don't think for President Trump to be unduly criticizing DeSantis either. But we'll get into that later. That's a minor point compared to the destruction of our criminal justice system, which we are witnessing in front of our eyes. Now, for me, it's not a big surprise because I've been watching this now since the FBI fixed the Hillary Clinton case, and a woman who destroyed 33,000 emails and government property and classified information. I mean, this whole thing with both Trump and Biden is a joke compared to what she did. And she got away with it, and the case was fixed from the get-go by Obama and the crooked Comey. And then from then on, it's been one after another. So you can't be surprised, right? You can't be surprised when Hunter Biden is running around, not just a free man. They crashed open Mar-a-Lago. They searched my home and law office. They conducted Gestapo-like searches on Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. They've investigated every aspect of Trump's life, searching for a crime. Now they're making one up. Investigated 20 years of my life and took my iCloud account without telling me. And they took it on the day that I became Trump's lawyer, which means they weren't after me. They were after my communications with my client. How could you get more unconstitutional, more illegal, more disgusting than that? So this has been coming for a long time, but I think for a lot of people, this really wakes them up because this is the action of a fascist government, political prosecution. This is what fascist governments do. And he's not just a fascist prosecutor. He's a bought and paid for one, inserted there by an outsider, Soros, who's inserted about 50 of these throughout the country. So don't think they're not trying to take over the country. Don't fool yourself. This is part of a movement to create chaos, to create an immoral, out of control society so that we'll just say yes to the Soros, Klaus Schwab, one world. And we know who's going to run that one world because they're on their way to doing it right now, and he's not even contesting it. And that's China. It makes no pretense of the fact that he wants to take over by 2048, and Biden makes no pretense like he'll contest it. I guess that's what 31 million plus gets you. You realize the situation we're in? It's terrible. Well, the latest, and if it's breaking news, I don't know. It's a leak. And the leak is that Trump will not be indicted until at least tomorrow, possibly Thursday, and then he'll be scheduled to come in for voluntary surrender next week, so that the FBI can work out the details of how it's done, which I can pretty much imagine. It's a very sad thing for our country. It is. This is the first time an American president is prosecuted. You would think the first time an American president is prosecuted, it would be for a crime that shocked the conscience, don't you think? It would be for a crime that the vast majority of the American people found abhorrent. You remember Watergate? Nixon had to leave office. Democrats were convinced that he had done something wrong. This is a purely partisan split, isn't it? There's never been any proof of any kind. In fact, the proof that's existed is they've been trying to frame him. So, I mean, Bragg is not doing anything different than Lucy and Schiff and all the rest of those guys, Nadler and we're doing. They're trying to frame him for Russian collusion. What's the difference between Russian collusion and making up a false business record case, which is a misdemeanor? Also, you would think you'd do better than a misdemeanor for the first prosecution of a president. I mean, it should be something a little more compelling to break that long tradition and turn us into a banana republic. But not for the Soros prosecutors, because they exist to destroy our country. I mean, this in many ways might even be the worst things they do. Look at the numbers who have died as a result of that. Look at the 17 cities. What was it, 2 years ago with record homicides? Just about all Soros prosecutors. Those people wouldn't be dead if they were real prosecutors who had those criminals in jail. I mean, they commit murder. Bragg has created considerably more violent crime and some murders in New York that wouldn't have happened if we had a responsible prosecutor. And the guy is an accomplice to all kinds of crimes. He came into office announcing he wouldn't prosecute about half the crimes. So why do you think New York City is in a crime crisis? By accident? No, because of our GA, who is motivated to destroy our country, to destroy our city for sure, but he's just one of many to destroy our country. And now he wants a completely bogus prosecution of something that just doesn't stand the smell test. I mean, it is so obviously a political prosecution that he has, before the world, demonstrated that we have become a fascist government. People all over the world will absurd. The man is being prosecuted because it's alleged that he paid $130,000 to a consenting adult who agreed not to go forward either publicly or in court with charges. They both agreed to it. They both signed it, and they both agreed to keep it confidential. Gee, there are only about 1 million of those in New York. And maybe for purposes of confidentiality, they use some euphemisms where if you technically analyzed it, you might say it's false, or a lot of these NDAs are like that. It wasn't used to fool anybody. It's between them, between two consenting adults. And it's a misdemeanor. And you take down a president, a former president on that. And that's not, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It isn't even hidden. It's out there for the whole world to see what a horrible country we've become under Biden. How much more do they need to see, actually? Are they laughing at us now? I mean, when he falls going up the steps, when he thinks he's talking to dead people, do they laugh? Well, we know Putin and Xi laugh at him and have killed people that they would not have killed had he not been in office. And of course, he can do nothing about it because nobody listens to him. The case in a little while, because there are a couple of things that I think I can probably explain as well, better than anybody, having done this for so much of my life. But I need to point out some other things, because some other terrible things are going on in the world. And you will find that this one is buried in the Wall Street Journal and not emphasized anywhere, but it's quite significant. The president of Taiwan is coming to the United States very shortly, might be here now, and going to Los Angeles and going to New York. And the White House and the State Department have gone to great lengths to apologize for it. Not for China not to see this as an escalation of anything. They explain that on a regular basis or every couple of years, the president of Taiwan comes to America and visits people, and it's nothing to excite the China. Don't get upset, Z, Do you realize how much of an indication it is that we are owned by them? I don't know what else you have to see to come to the conclusion that the president is a tool of the Red Chinese. Apologizing, finding excuses, for why the president of a sovereign country can come to our country, a country that Red China would like to destroy, a country that's our ally. The headline in the Post 2 days ago, coward, referring to Biden, an apt description. They should repeat it tomorrow. And when you have a president that's a coward, then other countries want to attack you. We have a president who's a coward. He leaves Americans on the battlefield to die. He leaves people who help Americans there to die in great numbers in Afghanistan. Not only that, he leaves behind the $75 million in sophisticated weapons, not just to die, but to slaughter them. That, please realize every day, 2 or 3 amazing, powerful pieces of evidence emerge. The President of the United States is bought and paid for by the Chinese government. The sequy is bowing to them over the Taiwanese president coming here. It's just one indication. Indications abound all over, including our unwillingness to call them out for COVID. And then each day we hear of a new transaction, the latest one being $3 million from Red China, arriving about a month or 2 after Biden left the vice presidency, distributed by this guy Walker to Hunter Biden and to James Biden, a long-term 30-year bagman for Joe Biden, as described by Hunter. That's not Rudy, that's Hunter Biden saying that. Also not basically disclosed to you by the crooked press. And then we got a nice portion of it going to Hunter's sister, whom he was having an affair in her home with her minor children there, smoking pot smoking crack cocaine just about every day. And if you look at the pictures in his hard drive, walking around with no clothes on, with another text in which the young girl, 14-year-old girl psychiatrist, says he should not be allowed in the house. He denies it, Hunter, to his father, but then says, "I am a danger to the children," for which the evil grandfather does nothing to help the grandchild. This is the same grandfather who has disowned one of his grandchildren, who's a baby. So we got a really very, very sick situation in the White House, taking advantage of it. We also have got a sick situation in the UN, who creates a climate hysteria with their latest report. I think now we have until 2030, and global temperatures could exceed 1.5 degrees centigrade. It's good. Yeah, not to end. We were supposed to end 2 days ago, according to Greta Thunberg.
Yeah,
You would get end 2 days. Yeah, but I mean, in fairness to her, she is quite a scholar. I mean, she's done enormous research on science and other things. And I mean, you can make mistakes like this, where it was like 5 years ago, she predicted by 2023 specific date, we would be overwhelmed. I don't know. I'm looking around here, and this is supposed to, according to Gore, this should be underwater.
this exact spot.
Oh yeah.
Right off the coast here.
Yeah. All that's happening is the property values here are going up like crazy. But this is supposed to be, you see how they believe Gore. And now the UN is frightening people, but they actually had to get down to it. They don't really know what the damage is going to be. There's going to be a lot of flooding. Of course, we could build dams. What do you think of that? We could build dams, and then it wouldn't flood. And then we'd have more land that we could use for agriculture. The climate would be warmer. Be a longer growing season. I mean, they're also trying to starve us by somehow taking the carbon out of the grass and the earth. And we got countries that are, their agriculture is going crazy because of the green movement. And here's the real kicker to it. So the UN's going to impose all that on us, and China and India refuse to go along. So what good does it do? They make up, they do, they do 2-3 times the rest of the world. So we don't mine for coal in the U.S., but they make up for by mining for it in China, and they produce it in a much more dangerous way, or theoretically a more dangerous way, based on these phony signs. We know they wouldn't do it in as clean a way as we do. Well, if the coal is going to be used and it's going to go into the atmosphere, why are we doing this tremendous damage to ourselves and our national security, but not using our coal, doing such damage to our people in Pennsylvania? I mean, it'd be one thing if the coal wasn't going to be mined anywhere, but you think the coal from China is cleaner than the coal from the U.S.? Actually, it's the opposite. Do you realize how this defies common sense? This is a cult. This is an absolute cult. I mean, let me remind you of a couple of predictions, okay, by the cultist. The Salt Lake Tribune reported in 1967 that it's already too late. We should expect global famine within 8 years, according to a Stanford University biologist, Paul Ehrlich. He warned the time of famine is upon us and will be at its worst and most disastrous by 1975. And he wrote a book called The Population Bomb. And he blamed it on overpopulation, which, of course, helped to propagate the murder of babies, meaning abortion. That's, when abortion really took off. And he said the world was overpopulated. When he announced a prediction in 1967, the world had people, now has 7.7 billion. And one of the main problems facing Americans is obesity, not hunger. So much for that. 1969, humanity will disappear in cloud steam by 1989. 2 years after Eric predicted famine, he announced that hunger would be the least of our problems. We'll disappear in a cloud of blue steam unless we change our behavior. Luckily, nobody turned that into a multi-billion-dollar business and a way to, a communist plot to redistribute wealth. Otherwise, we'd have been doing it back then. Now, how about this one? This is a really good one. 1970. The Ice Age is coming by 2000. The Boston Globe reported in 1970 that we'd be in an ice age within 30 years. Those predictions were later confirmed by space satellites, according to a report in The Guardian. Telltale signs are everywhere, from the unexpected persistence and thickness of pack ice around Iceland, with migration of warmth-loving creatures like the armadillo from the Midwest. This would remain conventional wisdom until at least 1979, until the New York Times reported that an international team of special finds no end in sight to 30-year cooling trend. That was just 1978. And then 1988, we got the first global warming thing. And let's see, we've got about 18 predictions of the world ending. Gore focused on 2010. And then, because global warming and the Arctic was going to be, how about this one? The Arctic was going to be totally ice-free by 2018. Have you been up there lately? Oh yeah, people run around in bikinis. The Arctic is the first tipping point. This is James Hansen, NSA climate scientist. I'm I'm as I'm as honest as Dr. Fauci. The Arctic will be the first tipping point, and it's occurring exactly the way we said it would. Now, Dr. Hansen predicted in 1989 the Manhattan West Side Highway would be underwater in 20 years. 89, 99, 2009. Eric, is the West Side Highway underwater? Do you know? Ted, rather. I called you Eric. I don't know why. Ted, is the West Side Highway underwater? And has Dr. Hansen apologized?
It's been a few days since I've seen the West Side Highway. The last time I was there, it was very congested, but still above water.
Yeah. Okay. Well, according to NASA client scientist James Hansen, the Arctic will be the first to go. And by 2009, the West Side Highway will be underwater. And in 5 to 10 years, the Arctic will be free of ice all summer. Al Gore said we'll be ice free by 2013. How explain to me how they get away with this? Explain to me, how do they really think we're that stupid, or are we that stupid? This is an issue. It's not a by any means a catastrophe or an emergency. All the predictions have been way off, all designed to get us to spend money, to redistribute money from rich countries to poor countries, and nothing effective is done because we're afraid to put any pressure on China. And if you get to now where the China owns us, we're not going to put any pressure at all. This administration and a good portion of the Democrat Party. Okay, now another one that nobody paid any attention to. Do you know our demented president executed his first veto? The veto that the bill that he vetoed was a bill designed to protect your pensions. It was a bill that was passed by a somewhat bipartisan vote of the Senate with Manchin and another Democrat, maybe it's Tester of Montana, voting for it, passed, and it would eliminate from investment decision the requirement to consider climate change, equity, and a couple of other things that have nothing to do with making money in the investment of money. In other words, it would eliminate a lot of what brought sovereign bank down and SVB Bank, and is playing havoc with a bunch of other banks. Well, President Woke vetoed it, or he signed in the wrong place, one or the other. That's what happens sometimes when you really belong in a nursing home. But I have a feeling that he's either become a thoroughgoing communist or a tool of the communists around him, one or the other. Maybe that's the reason they hide his dementia and his Alzheimer's and his loss of any kind of brain, so that they can manipulate him, and he will keep moving us into being a communist country. I mean, Bragg has done a pretty good job of proving that we're a fascist country. So this is intolerable, and we just can't wait until we can confront this in 2024. Do you know what the illegal migrants in New York? Oh, did I say? I think that's illegal for me to say illegal migrant. I'm supposed to lie. because we're in Animal Farm or is it 1984? I'm supposed to not acknowledge that they violated the law coming here. But it says here, it's going to be a minimum of another added to the New York City budget in 2023. You happy about that? Hey, don't complain, New York. You voted for Adams. He invited them here. You want to keep voting for Democrats? Keep voting for Democrats. Look at you getting slaughtered. 50 years of Democrats, every weekend it's a shooting field. Black kids getting killed mercilessly. And they just keep voting for Democrats. What can you do for them? You can lead a fish to water, but you can't make them drink. But we're going to try and keep leading them to water. This was his first veto, Hairbrain's first veto. Yep. You have got to consider global warming. I'm sorry, we don't say global warming, we say climate change. When you invest our retirement money. Previously, pension funds could only make decisions on pecuniary factors. That is, what investments to make the most for retirees. The resolution supporters said the Labor Department rule would allow for the wasteful misdirection of at least $12 trillion in retirement funds. That's your money. Your money.
Mayor, anyone that may have listened to Al Gore or one of these end dates and lived their lives accordingly, maybe they drain their bank accounts, right? World's going to end. Should they have any case, any standing to sue Mr. Gore or some of these?
I
these
really doubt
characters?
it. I really, you know.
Yeah. Yes, but maybe
Even if it were a conservative doing something on the opposite side, the courts would probably find some way to screw him. But
well, that'd be misinformation. We
they're not
wouldn't be
gonna-
allowed to go on.
it's not a legal protection. You're honestly not protected against misinformation. First Amendment contemplates you'll get plenty of misinformation. You just have to know how to analyze it. That means it's a country in which people get to say all kinds of things, and you got to figure out what's right.
Well, misinformation today means anything that goes against the narrative.
Here's misinformation. Biden is, he doesn't talk that assertively. This is a epidemic of the vaccinated, except more of the unvaccinated was spreading the disease than the vaccinated. But that was misinformation. But if you said the opposite, that was considered misinformation. Misinformation is a very, very dangerous concept. Extremely dangerous concept. Extremely. So I want to see the thing here, and I'm going to have you find it for me. I want to see the part here where Cohen describes the fact that he never asked for. Well, I was thinking he never asked for a pardon. We could do that one. He committed perjury on that because there are any numerous witnesses who can say he asked for a pardon. And then he had to actually clarify it at some point. And this was his lying after he cooperated. Then, of course, he said that he never asked for a job at the White House, and he's on to Chris Cuomo that he asked for the job of chief of staff. But then to top it all off, after all this, and his pronouncing that he tells the truth now and he's capable of telling the truth. Last night, right on television, he said that he had never waived the attorney-client privilege. And Bob Costello produced, without much fanfare, a document that he signed in which he waived the attorney-client privilege. It's about as clear as you can get. I think we showed it to you last night. I'm pretty sure we did. Pretty sure we showed it to you last night. See it again, text in and say you want to see it again. But the reality is, I show you that because you can't base a case on a serial liar. Serial liars are thrown out by ethical prosecutors because no one lies half the time. I mean, just imagine your brain for a moment. You're on television, and this guy who was your lawyer, the guy says that you signed a waiver of the attorney-client privilege. I don't know, unless he's got a mental illness like Biden, he must remember it. He doesn't think the guy's going to produce it and make a liar out of him. What kind of liar is that? Or he says under oath in front of a House committee after the chairman of the committee warned him that he'd be prosecuted if he committed perjury. Of course, he wasn't. It was a Democrat, and he was lying. Had he perjured himself and defended, had he defended President Trump, they probably would have prosecuted him for perjury, because they define perjury also, what's true and what's not true. But he's warned about perjury, and the first thing he says is, "I never asked for a job." And then he knows he's on tape asking for a job. So I say we got a pathological liar here, and I think the Trump defense should be able to show that to the jury. They should be able to show to the jury he doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie. So how can you convict somebody based on his testimony? And isn't his first version of it probably the correct one, which Costello outlined last night, which is that he paid this money on his own in order to suck up to Trump, because he was always in trouble. He was always in trouble because he was a major jackass cutting corners. And Trump had a soft spot for him, unfortunately. Unfortunately. So, I mean, this is going to be quite a thing, God forbid, when this happens. It can be quite a thing when this happens. And I'm beginning to think, from what I'm reading from the leaks, that it is going to happen, and it can be a very, very sad day for America when, for the first time, an American president is indicted for bullshit. It's worse than bullshit. So it's political criminalization. It's weaponization. It's what happens in a banana republic. It's what they do to each other in Russia and China. It's the hallmark of a fascist economy and a dying civilization. And it isn't isolated, unfortunately, also. Don't think you are immune to it. So, we got any good text, Ted? I always like to know that first before we get to our calls.
Our chat room is busy, and we now feature a lot of these messages on the screen. A lot of thank you, Mayor. Thank you for staying in the fight and continuing to call it out. One question we're getting, I've seen this before, asking about the statute of limitations specific case, and has it run out?
Yes.
And so how is he able
It
to?
may very well be dismissed at an early stage in a violation of the statute of limitations. They're going to argue that it's some kind of ongoing crime. But then any crime that was committed that you didn't confess would be an ongoing crime. And of course, that's true of every crime when the statute of limitation runs out. I mean, let's just use an example. Let's say you robbed a bank, right? And you have not, and you haven't reported yourself for doing it. Well, the statute of limitation isn't. They call it tolled, which means got to get this right. There we go. There we are. I got it right. So the way a statute of limitation works is they run anywhere from a short one of 1 year to a long one of 10 years. The recollection is RICO is 10 years and murder is infinite. The statute of limitations can be told, meaning held up for certain things. You can voluntarily agree to do it while a prosecutor is considering whether to prosecute you or not. It can happen if um, um, it can happen if you deliberately create an entire conspiracy to hide the crime, pay money to hide it, do that sort of thing. There's no such thing as charged here. This is just a straight out and out. Well, the crime is a misdemeanor false business record. So there's nothing that tolls the statute of limitations of what I believe would have been 5 years, and it's been over. Nor is the underlying felony, the federal campaign violation, that's also run out. And not only has that run out, but that suffers from the infirmity of having been declined by the federal prosecutor right across the street, who decided there was no case to be brought, and a scholarly opinion that it's not a crime. And I'll explain to you why it's not a crime. One argument is that the $130,000 was paid to protect Trump as a candidate. But as Cohen Costello, who testified to it, and Chris Cuomo on tape, he did this to save Trump the difficulties he was going to have with Melania and the children and the family, and that it was more of a personal matter than a political matter. That's almost inherent, actually, in a payment like this, and that's what happened in the Edwards case, why Edwards was acquitted. But beyond being acquitted, it's also led to opinions by, I would say, a majority of the commissioners of the Federal Election Committee, Republican and Democrat, that when there's a dual purpose for money, one political and the other personal, it's not a political contribution. It also happens to be the view of Mueller. So Alvin Bragg, the Soros-purchased prosecutor who prosecutes no one, is going to take really two manufactured crimes. The reason it might very well not be a fake business record is it's a non-disclosure agreement, which very nature of a non-disclosure agreement is to be somewhat obtuse. And it's between just these two people, not anyone else who'll be misled. Unless you think it's a campaign contribution. I hope that isn't too complicated, but so shall we see what we have? We got anything else really good there? Or shall we see what we have across the United States of America and the world? Oh, tomorrow night, Dr. Maria tells me we're going to have one of Donald Trump's very best lawyers, one of the very best lawyers I ever worked with, and the author of a terrific book about the stolen election, Christina Bobb. A lovely, lovely woman, but also a United and a lawyer, and works very closely with the president. And I'm sure she'll have many, many insights into what's going on here. And we're here, as you can see, in Florida, 1 mile from Mar-a-Lago, and we'll have a little discussion about maybe, what's appropriately she can tell us, because she's a very, very appropriate, straight, honest person, as are all the people who work for Donald Trump. They're not Democrats, after all. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that for many, many Democrats, people. I just believe you are in a terrible situation. And I feel sorry for those of you who are brainwashed. I really do. Like all those people in Chicago who voted Democrat, and they're killing you like crazy. 50 years, you're going to break out of that.
All right, Mayor, we are John in Worcester,
Oh, like,
John, how are you?
good. Rudy, nice to talk to you again.
Not at all.
Yeah, we-
Julian from Holy Cross.
That's right.
So how?
Not too bad. Watching what's going on, it just bends me the wrong way. It's almost, go live in one of the South American countries or something. It's just sickening. I can't stand it. But I was calling in earlier before you touched on. I remember when I was a kid watching National Geographic when they were saying, the planet is cooling, and then they showed this
Oh,
ice
the ice
ice
age.
mask.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they showed this ice mask go. I used to be one of those kids that loved to watch that kind of thing, sit there. And they show the ice mask going from, Africa all the way over to, Australia or something, No, it's going to be covered with ice, they said. So now I get older, I get into a trade and I see all these regulations they try to put on everybody and pick everybody's pockets for whatever reason, right? And then all of a sudden, they couldn't pick our pockets with global cooling. So they decided because they can decide there's more they can claim causes global warming. Now, I remember the big lie when they go up and take the pictures of the ice caps when they start during the spring, and they tell everybody, look what's happening. And they get it all on
if you go
film,
back, you go back to the beginning of the predictions,
right?
they should be gone by now. So should South Florida.
Absolutely. That's right. They said all of New York will be covered with ice first. Then they said water.
Yeah.
Now they're saying it's supposed to be underwater. So now they say what they do is they take these films and they appeal to these nitwits who don't understand it. These things, and they come back 3 months later.
Well, it's so bad. It's so bad. They now call it climate change, so they don't have to be specific. So now, not climate change is a non sequitur, right? I mean, here's the question: do you believe in climate change? No, I don't believe in climate change. I know that there's climate change because very shortly it's going to become spring. And then after that, it'll be summer, and then it'll be fall, and then it'll be winter again. And even in a sub-Saharan climate, there are slight changes in the climates even there. But certainly in the more moderate parts of the world, there are massive changes. So what the hell do they mean by climate change? I mean, it sounds ridiculous when they say things like, we're going to end climate change. You are? This is an excuse so they don't get stuck like Greta Thunberg, who should have lost all credibility, if she has any, when, it came about that the day she said the world was going to be gone came and went. But didn't hurt Gore. He made billions after that. Okay. So who do we have?
Hello?
Hello?
This is speaking from Amsterdam.
From?
Amsterdam.
And what's your name?
Maurice.
Maurice, how are you? What would you like to talk about from Amsterdam?
Well, that's the thing, a country turning into communism and trying to help you guys not make the same mistake and make sure you fight for your country, because there's a lot of weird things going on in Amsterdam, what Rudy is talking about.
It's an example. I mean, I know a good deal. I've been there, but a lot of people may not have. So give us an example, Maurice.
Example would be, the change that we made ever since we got
like attached to the EU. And that's where things actually really changed. And if you look at our government nowadays, they're all part of the World Economic Forum, and people here don't believe it. They're brainwashed. And that turned our communism. I'm not joking. Our farmers are being sold out. They like, they need to sell their land. And they tell it's because of nitrogen and all that kind of bullshit, the climate change stuff. People are just pushed out of their houses. We got refugees coming in like crazy, and there's just one big plan behind it. It's the World Economic
Yeah, I mean,
Forum.
this is sort of a repeat of Stalin in Ukraine in the 1920s, starve them into submission,
Exactly. Well,
and
this
then
is
lie
exactly
about
what,
it, and the American communists will cover you up, and the English
yeah,
communists will cover you up. I mean, it's
yeah.
terrible. I'm glad that you are you an American living there? Is that it, or are you
I'm
a
sorry, I
citizen?
lost you. I think.
Are you an American living there, or are you a citizen of?
I'm originally Dutch, but I'm working on my visa because I started a company in Florida actually 2 years ago, and so I can see the huge difference going on between your country and ours. And Florida is still, for me, is still, Amsterdam back in the 80s.
Yeah, Florida is free country. I wouldn't recommend New York, New Jersey, California, Vermont.
I
They're all as communist as Amsterdam. California worse.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And other than that, I see it happen. I travel a lot around in the U.S. I've been to anywhere from Idaho, California, New York, back to Florida. But the reason why I'm calling it keep up the fight, because you got something to fight for. When I look at Florida and I just compare it to Amsterdam and where we were back in the 80s and where we are right now, just letting our government decide our whole life and taking control of every human being that's in our country is ridiculous. And I just see it happen. And me and my family, when I talk to my friends, they tell me, how's your company going in Florida? I'd say, great. Oh, that's the reason why you're moving. No, I'm fleeing Amsterdam because I don't want to be part of communism. And that's
God
why
bless
I
you.
keep talking.
I mean, I think anybody who has their head screwed on straight would understand that and should get the hell out of there. If you believe it's going communist as soon as possible,
Yeah.
come help us avoid it. Florida certainly is part of the free America. When you get into the blue states, the ones with the big old corrupt cities, they can be just as bad. In fact, in some cases, we may be even more fascist than you are. Witness what's going on right now with these DAs. So
Yeah.
good. We could use this kind of, and thank you very much for calling it.
The calls are coming in.
Hello.
Hi, you're on with the mayor.
Hi, this is Lori O'Hara.
Hi, Lori. How are
From
you? And where are you calling from?
Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, home of the demented one. Yeah.
I'm actually from here, though. There's a big difference.
Is he from there, or did he leave very early? I don't remember.
He was very early. My mother used to get so annoyed when it around for election time.
I have friends both in Scranton and in that area of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And they're horrified that they're horrified that he claims he comes from there. Huh?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is actually because of everything that's going on, and you have and you have a laptop of crime, and then we have this stupid stuff with misdemeanors, and the city is not what it was when I was growing up, and it's really disturbing to have a daughter at an age that I was, and the total obliteration of what you've seen is the crime is we have a great police force. Our police force is what saves us.
In Scranton.
It's yeah, they're great. And there's just crime upon crime, and
Yeah,
I
but,
mean,
you know, I mean,
drugs and
it's a mixed bag in Pennsylvania. I mean, Philadelphia is a disaster.
well, this it's getting there. We have a lot of that here
Oh,
too. There's overdose, fentanyl, all of it.
Well, that's that's
That's bad.
directly attributable to Biden, fentanyl. It could be stopped. It could be stopped.
Sperry Scranton International Airport is only 20 minutes from Scranton. So we had
That's the
night
way-
flights coming in.
You had night flights coming in with fentanyl and probably with illegals, right?
Well, with the illegals.
Yeah.
I mean, the fentanyl just flows through here. It comes through Philly. It comes from Philly. There's
Wow.
gangs here. There's all kinds of stuff here.
You
It's
never think of
bad.
it. You know, Scranton, Pennsylvania, was a good, hardworking town.
So the people that are still here, that have been here, that grew up here, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking
is
to
a
see the
great-
streets and the condition that they're in.
It is
That
to
there's
me when I
guns
watch
on.
my.
That
when
we
I-
had a high school kid get stabbed and killed. Like 2 years ago. Like a high school kid
No.
got stabbed and killed 2 years ago.
What kind of? You've got a good police force. What kind of DA do you
Yeah.
have?
Pretty good.
You don't.
Yes, we don't really get too much involved with what goes on. You know, we have a good drug court system that really works well. They do try to help people. There's a lot of services, but then you can just you could see when you're walking around, you know, that they're transient. There's a lot of transient. There's a lot of homeless. We have a lot of recovery. At the same time, we have a lot of drug addicts.
You get a lot of
So
crime
they
in
kind of,
that comes up from Philadelphia. I mean, you're not that far.
well,
Or you're not that far from New
it's a-
York either.
yeah, we're like at the hub. It's a hub here.
Yeah, no, I know. I
You know what I'm
understand, really.
saying? Because we're 2 hours away from anywhere. That was the nice part about it. But you know, there's people that can. There's other people it's just, what are you doing? You know, when you see the conditions of the roads and the street signs and things like that, it's like, what's going on? You know, we're
Can I ask you
Sure.
a personal question?
okay.
How does how did Fetterman get elected?
You know,
He can't
I don't
talk.
know okay, well, where did Oz come from?
I know.
Really?
I know. Okay.
Did that happen? You know, every Republican went, what? As far as I'm
But
concerned,
don't you think when it came down to it, it was better to have somebody who could talk?
don't you think if it came down to it, we should have had maybe Kathy Barnett instead?
Well, look, many
Do you know
times.
that 96% of the black vote went to Fetterman?
Well, I like Kathy a lot. You should know that, and I know her.
He was great.
But the point
she
that I'm
was
making is
great.
we most often don't get who we want. We got to make compromises and choices.
He was Hollywood. That was the biggest thing. That was the biggest
And
thing I think was wrong.
better to have a non-compass menace than Hollywood.
I think so.
But you'd rather have
So
you'd rather have this guy talk, can't vote.
I didn't vote for him. Of course, I voted for Oz. I mean,
Oh, but what you're saying is there should have been a better candidate to take him out.
well,
Okay,
you don't.
that's a fair
I
point.
don't think you've reached the rural Pennsylvania. I mean, there's
yeah.
Philly and there's Pittsburgh, but then there's everything in between.
Right.
You know, and then it was just you see all these people come in, and it's nothing against Oz and his qualifications per se, but it's just where did you come from and why? You know,
Yeah.
It was just kind of speculative,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Oh, it's a shame. I mean, it's really a shame. Well, let's
So
hope.
when were you governor? I mean,
Mayor?
mayor
I
of
was
New York.
mayor
Yeah, what
between
years?
1994 and 2001.
Oh,
So I
okay,
was
'cause my
mayor. I was
father-
mayor during the attack of September 11th.
Okay, because my father was for General Services Administration, and he
Oh.
used to commute.
To New
He
York?
graduated from the University of Scranton
Oh,
in '66 or '67.
was he
And then-
doing that in the 80s?
Yeah,
I was
He was,
I was the U.S. attorney then.
he was
Maybe I
in Fort
know.
Chaffee, Arkansas, when the Cuban refugees came over. I know he did that. He
I
was in New York for
definitely-
13 years.
So was I. I was in charge of that for the Reagan administration.
Okay, he took the Reagan early outs. Eventually, he went to
Right.
Philadelphia.
Right,
Then he
right,
retired
right.
out of there. So,
Thank you for bringing us up to date on home of the Yankee farm team, Scranton Wilkes-Barre.
it's a great city. It has great people. It just really needs to get on track somehow.
Yeah, let's hope. God willing.
I know.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you very, very much for the call. That was very informative. It's nice to know what's going on all over the country, but it's also very sad to know that we do share a very common problem, don't we? And a terrible one. And that is the prevalence of crime. And we didn't have that when Trump was the president, did we? And how many things can I say that about? That we didn't have the condition when Trump was the president. The border. Since Biden has been in office, every year is a record number. It isn't just in comparison to Trump; it's in comparison to every other president. It's a record number of illegals that we know of that came in. Ones that get checked in some way or another. The relation is for every one that we check or apprehend or see, there's at least 50 to 100% more. And I think the 50% is a figure that happens more when immigration is less, for the simple reason that the cartels who now run it know how busy we are, and therefore can take advantage of all the places that we don't patrol, which is almost everywhere. So, all right, even if you want to say it's 50%, he's let in 4 million, so he's added 6 million people to our population, and to a very large extent, well, 2 million of them, we don't know who they are at all. We have the foggiest idea who they are. The other 4 million, we have very little information about, except what they tell us, which may be true, and maybe we have the added problem, unlike immigration of the past, that it's orchestrated by the Mexican cartels. They are the gatekeepers. They stand at the border, near the border, to use it for massive profit. Fentanyl being the big one, which they do with China, our enemy, and of course, because he does nothing about it, because he works for China, and therefore just lets them in. I think he'd let them in anyway, because for some reason, Democrats believe in open borders. I think politically, they think that will help them. But you just think of the border situation. Do you think Ukraine would have happened if Trump were the president and we didn't have a massive coward and weakling in the White House who demonstrated that with Afghanistan and invited being taken advantage of? And as I said, even today, the appearance of him, his administration apologizing and saying, don't be upset, China, because the president of Taiwan is here. It just leads to their taking advantage of us. Peace through strength. The guy that was from you better watch out in Ukraine, huh? You better watch out. He sure has a hell of a situation. He's created a hell of a situation there. Created a stalemate. He have the wherewithal to affect Russia and stop them, and he doesn't have the guts to really support Ukraine. So Ukraine is in a never-ending, and Russia is in a never-ending battle that will give him just enough to hold on, but not enough to win. And meanwhile, the whole population could get wiped out. But what does he care? I mean, he's raped that country before in other ways. And he's also probably one of the most corrupt people in Ukraine. Ukrainian people know what a crook he is. Come on, you know what a crook he is now. Unfortunately, it was hidden from you.
The fastest hour on the internet is now, of course, we want everyone to go to rudygiulianics.com. What does the CS stand for?
Common sense. Tomorrow, as Ted knows, we've got a podcast that's going to go into, I think, the kind of detail that you want on the on exactly from a legal point of view why there's no case, and even if it was a marginal case, this would be an act of fascism in terms of weaponizing the criminal justice system, lacking in any kind of legal merit. That it's really you can see right through it. I mean, we might as well announce to the world that we no longer have a fair criminal justice system, that we have a system for Republicans and a system for Democrats who can get away with anything: Hunter Biden, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. And how do we explain this thing, even if people believe it, that Trump had an affair with some woman in 2006, I think it is, and they paid on a sum of money so that they would both protect their reputations, which is what a non-disclosure agreement is. And yet he's the first president to be prosecuted, but yet we let a president get away with having an employee born by a president and have to give oral sex in the White House while he's talking to members of Congress. That's pretty disgusting. But beyond that, I mean, and I'm willing to say, okay, sexual, whatever, but then he purges himself. That's a real crime. No Cohen witness lying about, there's no doubt about the Clinton situation. There's a lot of doubt about the Trump situation. There's no doubt about the Clinton situation. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's only one conclusion. There's one set of rules for Democrats and another set of rules for Republicans, and that indicates an authoritarian country, a fascist country. And you know what we're headed to. We're headed toward communism. That's where all little munchkins are trying to take us. Obama and student of Saul Alinsky should have seen that one, huh? Ted, we got a last minute one we can do? We're in soccer time already.
We're in soccer time. This show, per
Uh-oh.
usual, it just flies by. I feel like it just started.
Uh-oh. Well, then we'll
Who do we
get
have?
people ready for tomorrow night.
Yeah, who do we have on tomorrow night? I know we have a very
Christina
special guest.
Bob, and she is a delightful guest and a very, very knowledgeable guest, and has written a really terrific book that you should get your hands on about the election. She'll tell you more about it tomorrow about the election situation in 2020, which we really have to be aware of so we don't get hosed again in 2024. Too much at stake. I guess something like this reminds you of it. Something like this, meaning the district attorney of New York becoming a dictator and a potentate, but really he's a puppet. He's a pezzo navante, Italian word for puppet on a string. That's the figure in the Godfather cover. Oh shit! A little pezzo navante. You see the hand and the puppet there. Here's a puppet. On with my good friend Greg Kelly.
Now, is that live or
Am
taped?
I taping at 9:30 or am I on live at 9:30?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what. Check out at 9:30 and check it out again at 10:30. Okay? But you definitely should listen to Greg. I mean, Greg is one of my favorites, and Greg is a heck of a patriot. And he's got a real head on his shoulders. The book is good. So we'll be back tomorrow night. I'd like you to go to rudygiulianics.com. Please do that and sign up for me. You'll help me a lot if you do that. Subscribe for me and go to the podcast. And I think you're going to find it right on target. It's going to give you a couple of explanations and views on this that you might not know, because a lot of the stuff gets, obfuscated on purpose and that's our job. That's our mission. In fact, you keep telling us you can write to Ted, you can write to me, you can send text in. You don't think we're getting you enough of the information that's being suppressed and hidden, we'll work even harder, okay? But it's our job to make sure that the First Amendment is satisfied in this country and we have an informed electorate. Because that's the way the brainwashing your electorate. That's why all these people reflexively and as like Pavlov's dogs just vote Democrat. And they're getting slaughtered left and right. We got to end that. We got to end the Democrat Party. I didn't say an opposition party. It's got to end the Democrat Party. About time we end the party of slavery. Start a new party with all the Democrats. Just come up with a more acceptable name. So we'll be back tomorrow. In the interim, you can go to WABCradio.com at 3 o'clock tomorrow, and you can call in there. And before you do that, take a look at RudyGiulianiCS.com and take a look at the whole Bragg case dissected in about 30 minutes. Well, thank you very much.